There he is.
Hey, hey.
What's up?
How you doing, Kate?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, we got a
My
lot of
pleasure.
I was actually kind of surprised at how much feedback I got when I posed the question about, what questions you guys have regarding visiting a chiropractor because
Got some
for those of
millions.
you that don't know, this is Dr. Lenny Roberts. He is my personal chiropractor. He's located right in the Philadelphia area. And you know what? I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and
Okay,
we can go from there.
cool. Well, thanks for having me again. My
Yeah.
name's Dr. Lenny Roberts, born and raised in Roxborough, and have practiced there since the day before 9/11. So it's 21 years and a couple weeks now. Been doing this and absolutely love what I do. It's been an absolute pleasure. So we see a variety of different people, all different sizes, shapes, and backgrounds. And we love letting people do their thing, whatever that is, and let them do it to their optimum potential.
Awesome. And if you could just I know I had a lot of athletes reach out and they were specifically asking for, if you're going to bring a chiropractor on, I really want somebody that's really familiar with people that are highly involved in athletics. We have a lot of competitors. I do the bodybuilding. We have a lot of
Sure.
them, a lot of former college athletes. So
Yeah. Definitely have a little bit of experience with athletes. I've worked with a variety of different Olympic, professional, worked with the 76ers for 6 years from 2009 to 2015. Worked with Temple football since then. We've worked with Olympic rowers and professional boxers and a variety of different athletes, fitness performers, bodybuilders, very diverse group of practice, CrossFitters, competitive CrossFitters, all different types of, especially the ones that really love to get after it. That's kind of our niche of people that push their bodies hard and demand the most from themselves. And the little bit of a difference that we can make in enhancing them be their best can really go a long way, whether that's in a performance setting or a fitness competitor setting, whatever it may be, just allowing that individual to function at their best.
awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So what made you want to become a chiropractor? Was there something that specifically happened in your life or?
Yeah, short version, I knew I wanted to go on and be in healthcare. When I was young, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. My friend's father was the orthopedist for the Sixers. And, just looking at him from afar, he had big house and fancy cars and motorcycles and boat and all that fun stuff. So, young and impressionable, that was really something I wanted. But, looking back at it, I had a staph infection after my fourth knee operation. So I had three in high school and then my fourth in college, and that led to a staph infection that was like nobody's fault or anything. It's something I had a portal in my knee that didn't close. It was a pretty minor procedure, but it wouldn't close. Like every time I bent my knee, I would get this like green, juicy goo popping out of my knee. It was pretty gross. So I got a staph infection, and then that wound up leading to two more surgeries and like IV antibiotics for 8 weeks, I think it was, and just in a wheelchair for a long time, and just was shied away from orthopedics for that reason. And right place, right time. One of my roommates from school had his good friend come down, Dr. Pat Conley, who's a chiropractor in Asbury Park. And he talked to me about chiropractic and how the body heals itself, and just really right place, right time. That along with had a couple other classmates that were going to chiropractic school. And I'd never been to a chiropractor at the time, but just kind of, it found me more than I found it. And very grateful that all happened.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great. Well, I personally can tell you that for the longest time, I know I shared this with you when I started with you years ago, I was very hesitant. And my main concern was actually the number one question that had come up, which was I was very nervous and skeptical about any type of cracking, especially with my neck. So maybe if you can address for people that were like me, that were concerned about why exactly you do that. Do you need to do that? Does a patient have to go through that? And if not, I know I don't go through that. You kind of alter the way that you care for me to get the same effect, but
yeah. So there's a variety of different ways. Yeah, the noise that you hear is basically gas being released from a joint capsule, and that does have some benefits from a pain standpoint, overriding pain receptors in our brain. But the concept of what we look to do is find areas of imbalance and restriction in the joints. The bones house the nerves, and then that pathway. So I can keep this nearby. But these joints control the nerve flow and how that functionality between the brain through the rest of the body is all coordinated. So when you have imbalance and restriction in those joints, then that communication pathway doesn't fire on all cylinders. It's like, think of it as like a dimmer switch on a light, where the light in your body is absolutely astounding, no matter how competitive you are, how your physique. If you're completely deconditioned, you still have amazing things going on in your body. And what we try and do is find those areas of imbalance or those resistances in your body and then crank them up and allow your body to function at a higher level. So getting mobility and motion into those joints can help take some of the pressure off of the nervous system. And that in conjunction with posture and whatnot, we really try and work on getting the whole body to function at a higher level. So you can get motion into a joint and hear absolutely nothing. We have instruments that we use that are very gentle and subtle. We use those on folks that may not prefer either of those ways. We can use a table to work on getting motion into it, to have the table. It's called a drop adjustment where you can get motion. That's what we do with you. So you can still get that goal accomplished of reducing pressure and tension in the nervous system and getting that body to function at a higher level in a variety of different ways. So we never, if somebody especially voices any concern with that, and we typically start off anybody in a more subtle, gentle way, and then get them more comfortable if they've never been to a chiropractor, and then build them up a little bit at a time. And then if they are comfortable with it, awesome. I personally get adjusted that way, and I resonate really, really well with it, but we never force anything on anybody. There's still a bunch of different ways you can work on someone and still achieve the same objective.
That's great. Okay. So for those of you that were asking, you do not have to endure the actual twisting and
quick share, Kate. The youngest people I've ever checked were my two kids, and I checked them before my wife held them. So I did not go in there and start wailing away on them. It was very subtle. Use the tips of my fingers and check them for imbalance. So that's it's the same concept applied, but a very different application depending on the individual.
Okay. And going back to our very first visit, I know with me, you took x-rays of exactly what you saw. I know, in speaking with people that have gone to the chiropractor, not all chiropractors take x-rays. So is that something that you mandate when you, and one other follow-up question to that is, when you take the x-ray, can you tell from initially looking at that if you can help that person through the services you offer?
Great question. And I never, the umbrella of what falls under chiropractic is very diverse. And there's very different schools of thought and different ways and different practices and different theories and applications of those. So for me, x-rays are essential. I want to look at the structure, the posture, what's going on the inside, and also the function to see exactly how the bones are moving when we move. So for me, that's a critical part of someone and how I can give them the best recommendations on what we would need to do to try and not just try and crack somebody and get them out of pain per se, but to try and actually restore proper structure, proper function to their body. It is a process, and that's going to give us a lot of insight as to what is involved in that process. So I wouldn't say that it's bad per se that someone doesn't take x-rays, but for me, knowing what I know and seeing what we see, we actually send all of our x-rays out now to a radiologist to give us an extra set of eyes, and someone that stares at x-rays all day and looks for any fractures, tumors, infections. And we've had, I think, 4 people in the last, say, 5 months that we found lytic lesions, cancer on those people that they had no idea that they had it. So that's a tricky conversation, but it's certainly something that for me personally, I want to see what's going on so that I don't do anything that may be detrimental to that person. We find fractures, we find a variety of different things. So to me, it's a critical portion of what we do, but I definitely wouldn't want to badmouth anybody that doesn't do it that way. It's just how I personally like to practice and what resonates best for me.
Okay. Something else that came up was, Kate, I don't feel the need to go to a chiropractor. I don't have any necessary injuries. Because I talk to people about preventative care, which I need to be better about. I know I need to be better about it myself. But what would you say to someone that doesn't necessarily, like, they weren't in an accident, they didn't have a terrible athletic injury, but they're sitting at the desk all day on the computer, or they're hunched over texting constantly. Like, explain a little bit about how just general care can help the average person.
Yeah, I mean, you already really answered that. It doesn't have to be a substantial, macro trauma of a car accident, a sports injury, getting punched in the face, those sorts of things. But the repetitive stresses are so prevalent in society today with technology. And the vast majority of us are spending hours and hours and hours a day sitting. And most of us are sitting in really, really crappy positions. And, if you just get yourself in a lousy, just head forward, like most people are either looking down at their phone or on a computer, your head's coming forward over your shoulders. You're compressing your heart and your lungs. You're not getting the optimum expansion and contraction of your diaphragm. Your body has that dimmer switch on it. It's not functioning to its optimum potential. And that may or may not lead to pain, but it's always compromising that optimum flow from the brain to the rest of the body. And even just taking a couple deep breaths in this position versus a couple deep breaths in this position, anybody that's watching or listening to this, you'll feel that difference. And that's really the concept of what we try and do, is remove those imbalances and make people more aware of those things. They go a long way. I mean, I've had that poster in the office of the abnormal texting posture up there for over 10 years. I mean, I don't even remember. It was like the first fathead that I ever bought. It sticks on the wall and it has somebody in a really lousy posture and someone in an upright posture. And we talk about it all the time. People come in the office and we talk about it all the time, and they still are. It's a habit and a behavior that, from my perspective, life is definitely stressful enough. You put the news on. There was, tragically a mass shooting and right down the street from our office last week. I mean, there's a ton of stress in society. You don't have to go far to be exposed to that. So what we really try and do is balance some of those stresses, and they can be physical stresses, the accidents, the falls, the sports injuries, etc., or the repetitive stresses, and then the mental stress is a huge portion of what goes on in people's lives: anxiety, stress, depression, those sorts of things, and then chemical stresses, sugar, alcohol, caffeine. So where most of our society is bombarding themselves with stress and stress and stress of all different factors and facets. And what we try and do is help balance that out. And we don't fix everything, let alone anything, but we try and restore proper structure, proper function to the body, and let your body function more optimally. Yeah,
the one poster that you have was the breakdown of how heavy the average head is when you're when you're sitting in proper posture, and then as you hunch over, you literally gain the weight of the world on your shoulders the more the more you're hunched over. So that resonated with me.
Yeah. So I mean, you're in the fitness world. So for those of you that don't know what Kate's talking about, we have the poster that talks about the 42-pound head. So average head weighs 12 pounds, and if you have that properly positioned, that weighs 12 pounds. But if your head comes forward, each inch it comes forward adds another relative 10 pounds of stress and tension on the whole spine. So if you have a 12-pound dumbbell and you hold it here, not too bad. But same 12 pounds out here is way harder to hold for the same length of time. So that concept, again, just try and make those things real in those pictures and graphics. For me, help me communicate things to patients more so that they can understand more. And that's really what we're trying to do, is educate them so that they don't go back out into the real world and have those posture tendencies and habits break their bodies down.
And to follow up with that, how many visits would you say? I know it's going to range from person to person, but
sure,
you have to commit to this. It's not like a one and done type of procedure. So how many visits, if someone was going to commit to seeing a chiropractor, how many visits would you say they should commit to from the get-go?
Great question. And that would all depend on the office you go to. So whenever we sit down with someone, when they first come in, we'll do a workup on them, and we won't adjust them on their first visit because we want to see what's going on and do the intake we do and get a lot more information about the body. We send the x-rays out to a radiologist, and we analyze those x-rays. So that gives us a baseline of what we think they will need to actually correct any areas of dysfunction that we find. So that can range, from several times a week for several months to shorter periods of time. It really depends on what's going on and how long it's been going on. But we do what's called a corrective-based type of office. So our goal is to try and enhance proper structure, proper function, and that does take time, and it is a process. But we make recommendations, but it's not like, if you came in to get adjusted and then you said that Cam crazy busy, we're not going to, you're never allowed back in here until you go through this. So we always give the best recommendations we think someone needs and try and give them those suggestions and recommendations to get the best results in the shortest period of time. But that's definitely going to vary, and it's all depending on what that person's goals are. I can't want something more for someone than they want for themselves.
And how long does the average visit last? For people that have kids, they got multiple jobs, they're running around constantly, and their excuse, if I don't have time, how much time really is involved?
Really depends, again, on the office you would go to. I mean, I've had some absolutely phenomenal, mind-blowing adjustments in 30 seconds, where I've personally been to a chiropractor, and they're super focused, they're on point, and I've had absolutely astonishing adjustments in a very short period of time. We do a lot of soft tissue work. We do a lot of extremity muscle testing and those sorts of things. So average visit for us can be, anywhere from 7 to 10, 12 minutes, really depends on what's going on and how much is involved. But that's a pretty typical for us. And then there's other factors that people may need, like spinal decompression or other adjuncts. We used to have more of a rehab setting in the office that we don't have as much of now. There really depends. Like there's other offices that may do a full hour and change for the rehab and the posture work and those sorts of things. with how we had to change things based on some insurance stuff. I won't bore you with the details of that, but we had to get away from our rehab that we had up in the upstairs area of the office. So we try and delegate and educate people remotely with some online programs and protocols for mobility and stretching and strengthening for targeted areas and those sorts of things. So some of that time is dedicated outside the office for them. You know, obviously you do a ton for yourself. Not a lot of, you know, our average clientele, but a majority of our clientele does not do those types of things. So we try and educate them on the benefits of doing that and make that incorporated into their daily routines as well.
That's great. And I can only speak for Summit Spine, but it's great because it's not like going to, I love doctors, but it's not like going to a regular doctor's office where you can expect to wait in the waiting room 30 minutes past your allotted time. Like, I don't think in the 2+ years that I've been going to see you, I've ever had to wait beyond my time. And I'm honest, for me, guys, I'm in and out 10, 15 minutes. So for those of you that think it's going to be this time suck of your day, if you find the right person, it's really not.
We appreciate that. And we try to be efficient and effective and schedule appropriately. You know, we have multiple docs in our office, so that helps us as well. But really depends. But there are times when we do get a little backed up, but, you know, we're kid friendly. We had a dog in the office till COVID. So, you know, it was definitely a non-traditional environment where you're not going to be sitting in a room by yourself and waiting behind closed doors. You know, we try to have the upbeat environment, music playing, and you know, upbeat atmosphere. That's definitely a big part of what we try and do.
Yeah, no, it's great. And guys, if you have for those of you watching, if you have any questions, any concerns that you want to voice, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I'll scroll through and look for them. But in the meantime, I'm kind of just going down the list of questions that we got last week. So one other question. Do the electrodes really stim the muscles? Is it actually doing anything? Which I guess they're referring to like TENS unit or
so TENS unit is transcutaneous electroneurostimulation. So it creates a current between the body and that electric charge can it helps enhance blood flow. There's different schools of thought on how much it can help with pain reduction. But from my perspective, it's something that's a good tool for somebody that has substantial spasm and you may not want to take a muscle relaxer that's going to cover up the symptoms, but that can help to kind of decrease some of the spasm and tension and get some impulse into the muscle, try and get it to fatigue and get more blood flow into there. Blood carries oxygen and helps that tissue heal better and faster. So from my perspective, it's a good tool for the toolbox. Like I'll carry it on vacation with me if something happens. And there's times, you know, I never used it in years. And then there's times where I'm like, something happens and, you know, you're running around on the beach with the kids and you trip or something. And just like, oh man, I wish I could get adjusted right now. And I can't. And so I have the TENS unit. So I think it's a good tool, and it's a good tool for the average person, you know, that works out and gets after the body. It's portable, it's compact, it's pretty darn safe and effective. And, you know, the degree of effectiveness is going to depending on what's going on, but I don't have an issue with that. And we do give those out as part of like a, you know, somebody's flared up bad and they need something additional, really, really tight. When they come in, we try and have them use that to just try and decrease some of the spasm and get more blood flow into the air. Okay.
It looks like, all right, John has a question here. And we kind of touched on this, but I guess John, you probably came on a little bit late. It says, hey guys, as a professional athlete, how can chiropractic assist me in either training, competition, or recovery?
Great question. Dan O'Brien, for your younger audience, I may not remember who he was, but he was the gold medal decathlete back in, I think it was 88, if I'm not mistaken, 88 or 92. But there was a big, quick story. Dan and Dave was a big Reebok commercial, these two competitive decathletes, and Reebok ran this big commercial, and Dan wound up winning the gold medal. Dave, I don't even remember what his last name was, but he didn't make the Olympics. So they spent all this money in marketing and advertising. Long story longer, Dan O'Brien's quoted as saying that he didn't think he would win the gold. He would not have won the gold medal if it wasn't for chiropractic, and it's enhanced his performance 10%. Which 10% doesn't sound like a ton, but when you're talking about, you know, a 100-meter dash or a freestyle swim or, you know, a 40 time or whatever it may be, or an Olympic lift, whatever that may be, 10% is a huge difference. So a PR of 10%, if you have a 100-pound, you know, it's an extra 10 pounds. That's a big, big jump for a competitive athlete. So really, again, the fundamental part of what we do is to try and enhance the body's ability to function optimally. And getting that connection between the brain and the body to fire on all cylinders. I've worked with a ton of athletes and, you know, in settings where they have an injury or, you know, a pulled muscle or things like that. And also, especially with Temple football, you know, before a game, it would be like the guys would get off the bus and there would be like a line of guys, the music's blaring, but they all get worked on prior. Many of them get worked on prior to then go out and perform. So they're trying to get at their best and get things tuned up and ready to roll so they can go out and perform. And then there's definitely times where I work on people on the sidelines during the game or after a game, and then, the Monday after, et cetera. But that before the game tune-up was a huge part of what we did. So trying to get those people to perform at their best. And that's the same thing we have multiple Olympic lifters and things that come in, people that come in, competitive rowers and Olympic rowers. So to get tuned up before they go perform and then, get back, and it's a huge part of their ongoing maintenance routine to try and keep their body finely tuned.
That's great. That's great. And then he also asked a follow-up question. Does the stimulus help with the target areas such as an Achilles tear and repair?
I would not say that without definitely knowing like what degree of a tear it was, what's going on. So I wouldn't say just if you have a torn Achilles to just put a TENS unit on that. That would not be advice I would give. Definitely want to have that checked out. And, if it is a partial tear, to then, make sure that you're doing things properly to not have it be a complete tear. But I wouldn't suggest doing that without a professional evaluation and seeing that. And that's not even in my scope from a full-on tear perspective. That's definitely something we need to talk with an orthopedist. And that's, again, something else that we try and do is not be the do-all, end-all for anybody. We have a lot of different connections and great other resources that we have from other docs, orthopods, PTs, acupuncturists, variety of different providers, nutritionists, homeopaths, naturopaths that we can refer people to if it's something that's not responding to what we do, to try and get them the best results, even if it's not with us. And that's something I would definitely suggest that getting an ortho consult will be first line of defense. And if it's something that's not a surgical standpoint, then no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to go to this list here. Let's see. What can someone do to prevent traumatic injury to their spine just from like daily wear and tear? How can they, prior to even seeing you, how can they maintain their spinal health?
If you try and just think of your posture and be mindful of your posture, it goes such a long way. I mean, if you can, I'm sitting in a chair that doesn't have a back on it. I have my laptop here, and I try. I'm not perfect with it by any means, but I try and take care of my spine. I only have one. It's not something I'm going to trade in for a new model or get the 2023 version when it comes out. I'm taking this with me, so I try to be mindful. And I'm sitting on a chair that wobbles back and forth, so it keeps me aware of my posture and it helps keep the joints in my low back moving and functioning. So
I was just going to ask that. Is there specific chairs that you would recommend for people that work behind the computer? Do you recommend like those big balls? I know some people like the balls.
Yeah, the ball can be great because it's going to keep you more dynamic and more aware of your body mechanics. If you slouch on it, you're going to fall on your butt, and it's going to be the last time you slouch on it. Right. So we use those when we're adjusting. But my chair, this is not something I would recommend for everybody, but that's, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's okay.
See that?
Oh, yes.
So that's called a wobble chair. So that
Yep.
doesn't have a back, and it, that's something that we used to use in our therapy area. And when we had to close that down, I'm like, I'm going to use it as a desk chair. So it keeps me really upright and engaged. But it doesn't matter what kind of chair. If you have like this $10,000 chair and you sit in it like crap and you slouch, doesn't matter. If you sit in a folding chair that you got out of somebody's trash and you have good upright posture, then that's really what you want to be concerned with. So keeping your ear over your shoulders, over your hips, and then having your knees at 90 degrees, not letting your tibia come back behind your patella, basically keeping your knees at 90 degrees will help not load up your hip flexors and also not have a tendency to let your whole upper body round forward. So those subtle things go such a long way when people are spending hours and hours and hours, in front of computers, on phones, etc. So basic, act like you're taking a video instead of tucking your chin down to your chest when you're on your phone, goes a long, long way and prevents the small repetitive stresses from building and building and building and becoming detrimental. I mean, people come in with herniated discs from no specific trauma, but the repetitive stresses build and build over time.
Okay. You mentioned hip flexors, and that's one area of concern for me constantly. So I'm just thinking out loud. I'm like, I kind of want to do a follow-up with you where you show us, maybe I come into the office and you show us specific stretches that we can do to stretch out the spine, stretch out the hip flexors effectively.
Love to. And the stretching is definitely huge and critical, but if you stretch, say for, call it 15 minutes a day or whatever the time is, but you go back to those 8, 10, 12 hours of the loading up you're not going to balance that out. You know, so really the mindfulness to me is even more important than the mobility end of it. The mobility I think is essential, but the awareness of how you hold your body is really, really important.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to. Oh, there's one gentleman who works out at my gym. He is great. Adnan, this one's for you, buddy. He has a VP shunt from his brain to his stomach. Would he be eligible? Would someone like that be eligible for a chiropractic visit?
For sure. I have 2 of those patients that I've been seeing for quite a long time with shunts. And it's something that we don't do the traditional go in and start wailing away on the neck. But you can still do certain things and really be dependent on what's going on, exactly where things are, and just try and be as mindful and aware of his prior history as possible. But to me, I'm an eternal optimist, but there's always something you can potentially do to help someone and optimize them. And that's not to say that they're going to be cured and need to be able to take the shunt out. Like, that's not where I'm coming from. We don't cure everything or anything, again, but to try and find any areas of imbalance that you may be able to work with and be conservative in that approach is definitely something that can be done with the chiropractic. And I'm a big fan, Kate, of, you know, somebody, I know you work in Jersey there, and I know a lot of great docs over that way, and happy to be a referral source for someone that might be a great fit for them. If it's not us, absolutely would love to help that.
Great. And speaking of, why don't you tell, I know I briefly touched on where you're located, but why don't you let everybody know where you're located, if they want to see you specifically, when they can find you there?
Yeah. So we're located at 8151 Ridge Avenue in Roxborough, right by the Andorra Shopping Center. So if you're coming from Philly, we're right past Manayunk, up on Ridge Avenue. And if you're coming from the suburbs, we're right past the U-Haul station as Ridge and Henry split at the Andorra Shopping Center. We're right on the left-hand side as you come down Ridge Avenue.
Okay. One last question someone had written in. They said, with regards to their back, they have a bulging disc and dislocation, and they're not sure how you could help since it's more than just lower back pain. Would you be able to help them with that?
You know, we see a ton of that all the time. The dislocation, if it's a fresh dislocation, no, that's not our scope. But bulging herniated disc, yes, that's definitely. I have a herniated disc in my neck from a car accident, and the first thing I did instead of going to the hospital was went to my buddy's office, got it looked at, got x-rayed, and got on the traction to work on trying to restore the imbalance. So herniated bulging disc can be really, really complex and complicated, or it can be something that can be, you know, people can have them and not even have a clue that they have them. They just show up if they get an MRI on, say you get a brain MRI for something else going on, they find a herniated disc in your neck, or vice versa. If you have an abdominal MRI, they find that, you know, those types of things happen often where people don't even know they have one. So it can be a complicating factor. It can be something people don't even know that they have. But yeah, we work with disc issues often, and same concept applies. Trying to restore proper structure and function. And if it's like in this situation with someone with a shunt, try and work above or below an area. If it's like super hot, you know, we have people with cancer that, you know, we can't work on, say, their ribs, but we can work above and below. We do things in a much more conservative fashion. So again, all that's like collaborating and working with the other docs and oncologists or whoever else may be involved in that situation, but trying to whatever the condition may be, from my perspective, if you can reduce the imbalance and pressure and tension in the nervous system, let that body function better, it can enhance quality of life. And that's what we try to do every day.
That's great. This has been really, really helpful. If anybody, I know we just had a couple people jump on. If anybody has any questions, for Dr. Lenny, let us know. Otherwise, if you're watching this after we've already filmed it, if you have any questions that weren't covered in this video, feel free to drop them in the comment section, or let us know if you want us to do a part 2, what exactly you would want us to cover. I mentioned, you know, specific stretches, but if there's anything that we didn't cover that you want us to, drop it in the comment section. Let us know. Make sure to share this with your friends that are a little bit leery about seeing a chiropractor for whatever reason. I feel like we touched on most of the main issues and concerns that people have. But this was really, really helpful, at least for me, to go over everything again. Remind me, I think I'm coming in to see you on Thursday, so I'll see you Thursday.
Perfect.
But
awesome.
yeah, I hope this was helpful for everyone. And
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I will see you then.
Sounds good, Kate. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Have an awesome night. Take care.